How does the recent, declaration of Israel that Antonio Guterres has been established as a persona non grata?
Yeah,
What is the politics behind that?
just again, it's an indication of how detached Israel is growing from the world. How we are doing things according to our own logic, by our own rules, demonstrating that we don't care. It's a very stupid thing. Foreign minister. I usually don't use such language, but in his case, I have to. He's a very stupid man. He's an ignorant man. He knows nothing of the world. He's a career politician. He fashions himself Netanyahu's heir, but nobody would ever elect him. So he has resorted to being a clown. He tweets provocative tweets in various languages against local leaders, like against Erdogan in Turkey. He tweeted in Turkish, and he tweeted in Spanish after Spain recognized the Palestinian statehood.
So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who is watching this podcast of Middle East Insights platform. And today we are very, very privileged to have the rare and very insightful presence of Dr. Ori Goldberg. He is an Israeli scholar joining us live from Israel, and we have wished him Happy New Year. And he is also an expert in fields of religion, politics, and Middle Eastern studies. Now, the topic for today's discussion is what Israelis don't want to hear about Iran and Hezbollah. We at Middle East Insights are not funded by anyone. We remain independent and do not take any side. So, what exactly is Hamas? What is exactly Hezbollah? What is happening right now? There have been news. There's a strong sense of media censorship right now, according to law in Israel. At the same time, Hezbollah, Hamas, they are using the idea of Palestinian self-determination to advance their own goals, no matter how dictatorial or authoritative they are within their own structures. We have known that the assassination of Fuad Shukr, Ismail Hania, or even Nasrallah, whose burial is tomorrow, most probably. So they are not just movements. They are ideas that perpetrate over the period of time. In various ways, they take different forms, they take different leadership, and the cycle of violence, escalation, de-escalation continues, in which many innocent lives are lost. Be it the innocent lives of more than 1,200 Israeli civilians on 7th of October last year, the hostages, few of them who have returned and are still facing the trauma, few of them who are still not back, and many of them whom we do not know what condition they are surviving in right now as we speak. At the same time, a lot of Israelis, innocent Israelis, had to evacuate from their homes and go into shelters, bomb shelters, safe rooms, which also plays a very pivotal role on their mental health and well-being. There was a militant attack the day Iran attacked on Israel in Jaffa, in south of Tel Aviv, which was not much reported in the media. And these kinds of skirmishes continue. So with this, sir, my first question to you is that as an academic with a lived experience, how do you describe Hamas and Hezbollah?
Before I answer, I have to add to your description of reality what Israel has been doing. Israel has been contributing to the the deterioration of reality here in a very massive way. Israel has killed, according to very conservative estimates, tens of thousands of civilians in Gaza. It is continuing to kill civilians in the West Bank as it pursues these quote-unquote terrorists. And in Lebanon, every Israeli assassination, which is described as a precision attack by Israeli authorities, also brings about the death of dozens, sometimes more, Lebanese civilians, and Israel's bombings all over Lebanon are doing the same. How do I describe Hamas and Hezbollah? There is no single accepted definition for terrorism in international law. That's not coincidental. Terrorism and terror is a very politicized concept. There's a general consensus that it involves the use of violence or a threat of violence to pressure civilians into generating political change or achieving political goals. Both Hamas and Hezbollah are described as terrorist organizations. Both have engaged in terrorist attacks on Israelis and not just on Israelis. Hezbollah is generally credited with one of the first major in scope suicide bombing attacks in the history of modern warfare, which was the attack on the American embassy in Beirut in 1983, I believe. More than 250 people were killed. Hamas has regularly engaged in suicide bombings against Israel for a prolonged period of time. It is now, or has for several years, engaged in firing rockets on Israeli territory from its stronghold of Gaza. As far as Israel is concerned, these are terrorist organizations. They are recognized as terrorist organizations by the United States. Obviously, the United States has a long feud with Hezbollah ever since the embassy bombing I mentioned. That's more than 40 years. And Hamas as well. I think there are a lot of other places where they are recognized as terrorist organizations. I think a lot of people also see them as resistance organizations. Hamas considers itself part of the Palestinian national struggle. That means a movement akin to Fatah, which rules the Palestinian Authority. Hezbollah is a militia, a denominational militia of Shia Muslims. And Hezbollah operates within a country where the politics are denominational. That is, the leadership of Lebanon, political leadership of Lebanon is divided between Christians, Sunni Muslims, and Shia Muslims. And each one of those denominations also has an armed militia that is independent of the state's military. Hezbollah is the largest militia of these. Hezbollah enjoys close ties with the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is Shia as well. There's a lot of debate about whether is Hezbollah an Iranian stooge or an Iranian drone that simply does Iran's bidding, or is it a Lebanese organization that is committed to Lebanon? I tend to think that it is much more Lebanese than it is Iranian. I think the current situation has demonstrated that as well. In Israel, particularly after the October 7th attack and massacre, there's a tendency to present Hamas as close to ISIS, a jihadi organization. Hamas has never been a jihadi organization. Hamas has always been ideologically a part of the broader network of the Muslim Brotherhood, just like organizations all over the Middle East. But it has also always been a national organization devoted to promoting the cause of Palestinian nationalism. And that is by definition not jihadi. Over the last 15 years or so, more than 15, almost 17, Gaza, where Hamas is and rules, has been under an Israeli siege and blockade, and Hamas has grown more militant and more extreme during that time. Hamas has ruled Gaza in authoritative, forceful fashion. Gaza is generally a dictatorship. Hamas was never elected democratically by the people of Gaza, whereas Hezbollah has actually been elected democratically in Lebanon. So I guess you can say that the situation or the definition of what is Hamas and what is Hezbollah, they are both complicated and they are dependent not just on contrasting contexts, but on the eye of the beholder. In Israeli eyes, both are most definitely terrorist organizations. I think all over the world, certainly in the Arab and Muslim world, but not just, these organizations are viewed differently in October of 2024 than they were in October of 2023. This year has also changed their perception and the understanding of what they are and what they want.
So, sir, right now, as you rightly said, it is almost 4 p.m. in Beirut right now. Mm-hmm. The Lebanese ministry just revealed that 1,974 people have been killed, including 127 children and 261 women in Lebanon. 9,384 were injured since the Israel's aggression on Lebanon, according to Lebanese Ministry of Health. As we speak right now, there are bombings by Israel on the suburbs of Beirut happening right now. The areas that are targeted are Muawad, Al-Kafat, Saint Terese in southern suburb of Beirut. My next question to you, sir, is something which I don't understand. And I'm coming from a point of complete ignorance. When 7th of October took place, the Israeli intelligence stated that they did not have any idea of it, or the intensity of it, or the inference of it, or they didn't take it very seriously, even if Egypt did say. But over the past 2 months or 3 months, the way Hezbollah members have been targeted, and how Ismail Haniya or how Fuad Shukr or Hassan Nasrallah have been targeted, that amounts to very serious intelligence work. And all of it is creating a kind of cognitive dissonance in me, because I don't understand that on one hand, maybe they got even much more meticulous after taking 7th of October not very seriously. Or is it a certain kind of smoke and mirror situation right now?
You ask a very good question, one that a lot of people all over the world are asking. My answer is going to be complex.
Yes, sir.
Because it's a difficult question. These are two very different kinds of intelligence. Israel has always excelled at tactical intelligence and tactical operations, like the pager attack. Israel is very good at running agents in the field, but Israel is very good at intelligence that is directed towards a specific action. We want to hit Nasrallah. We will cultivate agents who are capable of telling us where Nasrallah is at any given time. Although I have to say that the assassination of Nasrallah was not particularly brilliant. Israel dropped more than 80 one-ton bombs on a residential block in Beirut. So we're not talking about some discrete assassination. We're talking about destruction. Okay, but let's think about the pager attack. That is very good intelligence, but it's very good operational intelligence. Israel is very, very good at conceptualizing and producing the intelligence required to achieve a very specific goal. When you're talking about October 7th, you're talking about a mindset, not operational capabilities, but a mindset. And Israel's mindset with regard to Hamas is the product of an occupation, a military occupation that is almost 60 years old, since 1967. Some will say it's 76 years old, since 1948, when Israel was established. During that occupation, the Israeli military has grown so accustomed to ruling and deciding every aspect of Palestinian life that I think the Israeli military could not have believed that an organization like Hamas, which is vastly weaker than the Israeli military, would dare to mount a military attack on 3 military bases and to invade Israel brashly over the border fence. Israel has invested billions in technological obstacles meant to impede and stop Hamas attempts to invade. Hamas simply cut the fence with wire cutters and moved in. And Israelis were not prepared to accept the notion that our superiority would allow Hamas to do this. Okay? And I can't exaggerate the importance of this enough. This isn't about preparations for killing a specific person or for obtaining a specific piece of knowledge. This is about how one lives the reality of a 60-year-old occupation. And during the reality of a 60-year-old occupation, you gradually, but very persuasively, develop the conviction that the hierarchy is very clear, but it can never change. Israel believed itself to be better, to be smarter, to be more equipped, and ultimately to be in charge. That is the mentality of an occupation. You are in charge. You ultimately know the people who are your subordinates, who are your subjects, better than they know themselves. You know them. You know what they do. You know what they want. They will never be able to outsmart you. They will never be able to surprise you. And that sort of vanity is precisely what allowed something like October 7th to happen. Whereas operations like the ones we've carried out in Lebanon are simply demonstrations of our tactical excellence. But that tactical excellence is very limited and very constrained. I think you can see it in the nature of Israeli operations in both Gaza and Lebanon. Israel goes after specific people. It seeks out senior Hamas leaders, just as it seeks out senior Hezbollah leaders. It wants to get them. That's all it wants. That's all it cares about. To the radical extent that if there are any civilians who are there in the environment, who are around the quote-unquote bad guy, then those civilians are fair game. It's okay to get them. I mean, again, Nasrallah was assassinated by dropping more than 80 one-ton bombs on a residential block in Beirut. Now, Israel says these people were human shields. Okay, but we still killed them. Okay, in Gaza over the past year, there have been numerous incidents where Israel has ordered civilian residents of Gaza to evacuate to certain places. And then suddenly some Hamas commander allegedly appears there. And then Israel launches a bombing that kills 80, 90, 100, 120 Palestinian civilians around this leader in order to get him. So that is what Israel does. That is what Israel is looking to do. But that is no reflection on a mindset. Israel's mindset is very vain, very self-centered, very much very much unconcerned with anything but accomplishing the operational target. And that, I think, is the best answer I have to how is it possible to be so fully aware of every detail of the Hezbollah leader's itinerary, but to be completely oblivious to the possibility that you can be surprised the way Hamas surprised Israel on October 7th.
So, sir, one thing which really, I'm very thankful to you for speaking with so much of openness and vulnerability. But, sir, thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable. But my next question is, at a personal level, how are you perceived within the Israeli population for your views?
As a delusional minority. I'm not the only one who thinks and speaks the way I do, but there are others. There are even organizations trying to pursue coexistence and an end to the war, but we are a very, very small minority, and the broad Israeli consensus is one that supports war and sees my opinions and my critique and the critique of others as, at best, delusions, and at worst, something close to treason.
So don't you feel scared, sir?
No, I don't. Maybe I should, but I don't. There is no official interest in me. That is, security authorities are not interested in trying to stifle me. And because I do most of my criticism in English rather than in Hebrew, this is something that this is a change that took place during the past year. Because I've switched to English, I just don't exist for most Israelis. I used to be fairly popular as a commentator on Israeli media on matters regarding Iran. I did not appear in Israeli media throughout the past year because I write extensively and my opinions are there. I've been the subject of criticism, but most of it is a war of words. I don't think my safety is compromised. I suppose it has to do with the fact that Israeli society right now is so closed off, so focused on living in its own world, according to its own rules, that the things I say, I think most Israelis, including many people I counted as friends and colleagues, they're just not able to hear me. It's not even that they're angry at me or that they reject what I'm saying. They can't process my words at the moment. It's lonely. It's not fun. I wish it was different, but I found myself on October 8th already writing vigorously. Then it was in Hebrew. I didn't feel like I had a choice. I still don't feel like I have a choice.
Thank you so much, sir, for explaining that to us, because we in India, we just even during Iran-Israel conflict, and there was a meme that like Iran and Israel, both of them are looking at Indian media to find out what they should do next. So it has become so popular as a rhetoric that it gets a lot of viewership. So thank you so much for differentiating your position so clearly, because that is one thing which I keep saying everyone, that the state is different from the civilians. And even within the civilians, there's no homogeneous group in any particular country, state, nation. There's so much of diversity.
I agree completely. And I will also add one point. The fact that most Israelis disagree with me doesn't mean that Israelis are now walking around feeling like everything is good. Israelis understand very, very well how bad everything is, because the reality of life in Israel is bad and getting worse. Prices are rising, jobs are disappearing, the social welfare system is slowly but surely disintegrating. Life is it's very difficult to get flights out of Israel. It's very difficult to fly into Israel. Israel is growing smaller. I'm not even talking about the physical significance, where the north part of Israel is shut down. And the southern part of Israel, close to Gaza, is also shut down. So we're talking about a country that's physically getting smaller. Israelis understand. Israelis know that this is bad. Israelis were not happy about the Israeli military going into Lebanon. But Israelis still feel that this is the only thing Israel can do. Okay? Nobody's happy here, or some people are, but very few. Most people are passive and generally walk around saying, this is hell. I can't believe we're doing this, but what are you going to do? You can't do anything else. I think it's an important point to understand. There aren't when Nasrallah was hit, there were celebrations, but those were mostly photo ops. Most Israelis are not celebrating. Most Israelis think everything is bad and can never be good again. So if it's already bad, we should just go for broke. The support for the war is not because war is considered morally correct. The support for the war is because what else are you going to do? You know, they tried to kill us on October 7th, and Iran just attacked us with it. They're all trying to kill us, so we have to do something about it. Okay? It's a nuance, but I think it's an important one if you want to understand Israeli consciousness at this point in time.
Yes, I agree with you, sir, completely, because most of my friends, they have the same kind of view that you have. And they come from historical backgrounds in history and specialization. Most of my other friends who are having their own cognitive dissonance regarding it, they are also not in the best of their mental health right now.
Yeah.
It is very disturbing because it makes me feel very small and insignificant that I can't help them. And there is a certain kind of, like, for example, when Benjamin Netanyahu gave this speech to Iranians that I want to speak to you without filters in English 3 days back, and then next day Iran attacked. There is an Iranian, population. There is Iranian population and Iranian diaspora that do love Netanyahu.
Oh, sure. There's always diversity and there's always politics. I think you're absolutely right. The state is not the people, but it is true that in Israel right now, there's a grim, reluctant consensus. Right? And yes, there are people like me who disagree, who criticize, who suggest other ways of doing business. But broadly speaking, my experience in Israel right now, my knowledge of the Israeli media, this is Israelis just simply can't see a way out. And if you can't see a way out, then, just do it. Go to war. Let's hope for the best. It is a very bad place for one's mental health. It's not good for anybody's mental health, this situation. This understanding that there's no hope, that you are foregoing a future, that you are, not accepting the notion that you are committed to fighting for the future. Nobody's thinking about the future. Our prime minister and most of my countrymen are playing this on a day-to-day basis. Get to the end of the day in one piece, that's a success. You shouldn't think about it anymore.
So, sir, how does the recent, declaration of Israel that António Guterres has been established as a persona non grata?
Yeah.
What is the politics behind that?
Just again, it's an indication of how detached Israel is growing from the world. How we are doing things according to our own logic, by our own rules, demonstrating that we don't care. It's a very stupid thing. Our foreign minister, I usually don't use such language, but in his case, I have to. He's a very stupid man. He's an ignorant man. He knows nothing of the world. He's a career politician. He fashions himself Netanyahu's heir, but nobody would ever elect him. So he has resorted to being a clown. He tweets provocative tweets in various languages against local leaders, like against Erdogan in Turkey. He tweeted in Turkish, and he tweeted in Spanish after Spain recognized the Palestinian statehood. And he does all sorts of things like that. They are media stunts. Declaring the Secretary-General of the United Nations as a persona non grata is nothing but provocation. And it's meant not for the world, but for domestic consumption. This is his way of establishing himself as a force for goodness. It's very stupid. It is completely irrelevant to anything. It is exclusively and only domestic provocation. And should the United Nations Secretary-General decide to visit Israel, I can assure you he will be allowed into the country. So
there are a couple of things which have also evolved over the past few hours. At the same time, I would like to know, let the audience know that a lot of social media footage that is also circulating right now about what is happening in Lebanon is not exactly right now from Lebanon. Most of them are from Ukraine or from the Arab uprisings. So be cautious when you consume that. Russia today, just 2 hours back, has ordered its citizen to immediately leave Israel, following Israeli airstrike near Russia's Khmeimim base in Syria. The Russian ambassador in Tel Aviv urged citizens to consider leaving Israel while such opportunities exist. So my next question to you, sir, is that Iran, when they did strike Israel 2 days back, they stated that they had informed Russia and United States a couple of hours before.
Yeah.
It is impossible for even Iran to fire 200 or 400 ballistic missiles on its own.
Of course, no, Iran can fire the missiles, but Iran notified the international community, just like it notified the international community on April 14th, which was the last time it attacked Israel using missiles and drones. And not only that, the Iranian strike on Israel was more successful than the Israeli authorities have reported. According to the reports I'm seeing, Iran knew exactly where it was firing, and it also managed to hit several of its main targets. The missiles that Iran used were non-destructive. Okay, they weren't show missiles, weren't like empty bullets, but they were missiles not meant to cause massive destruction. And Iran very specifically, very clearly targeted military targets.
Yes.
That means Iran knows what it's doing. Any attempt to present Iran as weak or as incapable, I think that's wrong. I also think, again, if you know the expression firing a shot across the bow, when two ships are engaged in maritime battle, if one ship wants to warn the other to back off, it fires a shot that goes over the ship, not what meant to strike it. This is exactly, I think, what Iran did. This was a warning, because Iranians are genuinely concerned that Israel might think it is capable of or should strike Iran proper. This was a warning, and this warning is to calm down, to stop. I don't know how Israel will respond. I'm assuming Israel will respond, but I don't think Israel will strike Iran's nuclear facilities. I don't think Israel will strike Iran's oil facilities, which are the threats that have already been made. I don't think we will strike nuclear facilities because they are scattered all over the country, and no single facility is crucial to the Iranian nuclear program. I don't think we will strike oil facilities because if we do, the price of oil will spike, and I doubt the Biden administration will support that. So I'm assuming we will hit some kind of military target. I don't know which one. I don't know how. It is a massive challenge, and we might be in for several weeks of exchange of hostilities that way without a real war breaking out. I think both Iran and Israel are waiting for the American election as well before they commit to any kind of long-term policy. And a lot of this has to do with the United States and the position that it will take on extended hostilities between Iran and Israel. We don't know what that position will be. So far, America, as you rightly said, supported Israel almost automatically. I don't know. I don't know if this continues. I don't know, because the incursion into Lebanon is definitely going to get bloodier. Israel is going to lose men. The achievements from that invasion are at best unclear, at worst non-existent. So everything is very volatile. Everything is very open to change. The only thing that seems to remain a constant is that that grim, reluctant consensus I talked about. Israeli support for war. Israelis support war. There's no denying that.
Yep. So something which has happened just half an hour before was Ayatollah Khamenei's son, on his behalf, has visited some wounded Lebanese and Islamic resistance fighters of Lebanon's Hezbollah, who have been
Mhm.
sent to Tehran and conveyed Supreme's leader message to them, which is, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Now, talking again about Iranian attacks. Now, this is how, in spite of the censorship, there are a couple of details that I know. First, that the Iron Dome,
Uh-huh.
currently only 3 to 4 Iron Domes are working. 4 Iron Domes are left. 3 aerial defense systems are down. Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 were taken down. Israel has opened up blood banks asking for blood donations to the Israelis who have been injured after the Iranian attack. And there has been much more damage than it has been accepted by the Israeli media because of the legal censorship that is there currently. At the same time, Iranian Peshkazan is right now in Doha talking with Hamas officials. And he's talking about Asian unity. And there have been threats made within by Iran that if the oil industry is targeted, then we will target all the oil industry in Saudi Arabia, Oman, all of these countries. Now, my next question in this context to you is that what really happened when Iran attacked? Because everything which we get to know is conjecture or some kind of agenda that is met by someone.
To the best of my knowledge, yes, there are details about Iranian hits that have been censored. Blood banks have been open for a while. I don't think this has anything to do with Israelis who were injured during the attack. Again, to the best of my knowledge, civilians were not hit and there were no casualties. And that actually says a lot of good things, a lot of things about Iran's ability to carry out an accurate attack and to strike where it wanted. And this is bad for Israel. Had there been casualties, this would have actually served Israeli interests, because then Iran's attack could have been presented as naked, brute aggression. The fact that there were very few casualties, if any, I think demonstrates exactly what I said before, that the Iranians wanted to send a message, not to start a war. What do I think happened? I think and about the Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 systems, I'm not privy to that information. You may be right. I can't corroborate. I don't, I'm sure that that Iran used intelligence received from Hezbollah, who over the past year has accumulated a tremendous amount of intelligence about Israeli air defense systems. Certainly, the Iranians managed to hit quite a few targets inside Israel. There were quite a few rockets who managed to make it inside Israeli territory and land and even hit close to various important strategic sites. Yes, Israel has been censoring what happened as a result of the Iranian strike. Israel has been heavily censoring reports about what is happening in Lebanon in the fighting between IDF soldiers and Hezbollah fighters on the ground. I understand that the Iranian foreign minister will visit Beirut tomorrow, perhaps for coordination or talks with the new leadership of Hezbollah. Again, I don't think a regional war is going to happen anytime soon. I think both sides are testing the waters. This is the first time the confrontation has taken place so directly. The truth is, nobody knows what's going to happen. Israel certainly doesn't have a plan. As I said before, Israel's specialty is tactical operations, not substantive planning. And Israel does not have a plan. I don't think Iran has a plan. I think the fact that Iran attacked means that the internal debate in Iran continues to rage. Up until now, new Iranian President Pezeshkian and his pragmatist supporters managed to persuade the supreme leader that Iran should not strike. I think at this time the Revolutionary Guard Corps and the hardliners won the day because I think Iranians are genuinely concerned and afraid that Israel, being a bull in a china shop, may simply go after Iran next.
Okay. So there are two more news stories that have evolved. One is that UK has been sending, since Keir Starmer became the Prime Minister of UK on 5th of July, UK has been sending spy planes through Cyprus to Israel to take intelligence from Gaza. And the
Yeah.
second is that Israel is employing mercenaries from Spain, from Netherlands, who are being paid $4,000 per week. Are these true?
About UK spy planes, I'm sure they are. There's certainly been British help to the Israeli war effort, even though there's public criticism of that in Britain. As far as mercenaries go, I doubt that. Israel has enough manpower of its own. So far, soldiers are continuing to fight. Israel is doing all kinds of reprehensible things, like offering African and Asian, mostly African, asylum seekers an expedited path to citizenship or permanent residency in exchange for military service and performing all kinds of very dangerous military tasks. That's reprehensible enough. To the best of my knowledge, Israel is not employing mercenaries and is not paying them thousands of dollars a week. Israel is not yet Russia, and it has no need to resort to such means because it has enough Israelis who are willing to volunteer.
So talking about the cost of, like, I was researching and I got to know, for example, if Hezbollah or Iran fire a rocket or ballistic missile against Israel, it costs them around $300 to $400. But for the Iron Dome, the interceptor missile, the battery of all of it, for each Iron Dome interceptor missile, the cost is $40,000. Is it true?
Yeah. I don't know the exact numbers, but there's absolutely no doubt that the financial cost of this war is staggering. That the amount of, and that money is being drawn not just from American aid, which is used to purchase American weapons, but from civilian and welfare budgets in Israel. So Israel is only beginning to see the implications of a year-long war. And those implications will only get worse. The civil security network will shrink. The quality of life will degrade. People who work for the public sector in Israel will suffer pay cuts. There's now an attempt on the part of our finance minister to get authority to divert the institutional pension funds that the people who work for the public sector have invested in various state enterprises towards the war effort. The Israeli economy is imploding. And Israel's international credit rating is being lowered constantly. Israel is doing very badly. And this is only beginning. Okay? For a year now, because the Israeli economy was robust enough, we've been able to sort of weather the storm, but the storm shows no sign of abating. And even as we were weathering the storm, it was by accruing more debt. That debt is going to have to be paid at some point. And when that comes, then the quality of life in Israel will nosedive.
Thank you so much, sir. What has happened right now is that Iran has stated that Germany and Austria had summoned the head of the Iranian missions of their countries after Iran's attack on Israel. And Iran is protesting against this, and it's calling it as a legitimate, responsible, effective response to the Zionist regime. At the same time, the Israeli army supposedly targeted Hezbollah's media relation office in the southern suburbs of Beirut just a minute ago. Al-Manar has quoted that Mohammad Afif, who is the head of Hezbollah's media relations, he is in good health currently. As we speak, the Israeli ground operation in South Lebanon appear to be in full swing, with Hezbollah claiming to be engaged with Israeli forces in several villages near the Israel-Lebanon border. My next question to you, sir, is that will this end? Will Netanyahu, Khamenei, Sinwar, all of them, will they end it?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure we have it in our scope or capacity to end anything now. I actually think that we're incapable of doing that. I would assume that any end that will come from pressure from the international community. And I don't see the international community doing that so far. I keep hoping that they will come to their senses. I don't know if they will. Maybe this is a plan to create a regional war. Maybe this is an attempt to go to war with Iran, to send a message to China. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of conspiracy theories. And I'm not a big fan of global master plans. I don't believe that people are smart enough or creative enough to create global master plans. But the way this is going, the international community, and particularly the United States, are failing every test that they are taking as far as morality goes.
Thank you, sir. My next question is that on October 6, 2023, the value of Lockheed Martin, which produces weapons and arms, was like the value of one share was $402. Today, they are worth $603. So who is profiting from the killing? The board of the board of Lockheed Martin, the world's largest weapons manufacturer, they are invested in Chevron, Oil and Gas Company, Council on Foreign Relations, Columbia University, US Steel, Google, Caterpillar, Occidental Petroleum, Satiological Satellite Company, Harvard University, University of Texas. The source of Lockheed Martin itself has says that their main personals are Jim Tracklett, Patricia E. Yarrington, Joseph F. Dunford Jr., David B. Burritt, Vicky A. Holub, Jesse Johnson, Deborah L. Reeds-Kluggs, Dr. Heather Wilson. Now, sir, do you see this entire discourse as the way the arms lobby is continuing it, be it in Russia, Ukraine, or be it in Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, continuing it persistently to generate revenues?
I think it's an undeniable truth that arms manufacturers profit from war. And in that sense, I can say that Israel is a global arms manufacturing leader. So, Israel also profits immensely from its wars, just like it profits immensely from its occupation. Israel sells various weapons specifically targeted at protests based on the experience that Israel has had with testing these weapons against Palestinians. So, yeah, arms manufacturers always profit from wars. It's not a surprise. It's exactly the same here. It's their business. And war is also an industry. There's no denying it. Every major country in the world is engaged in that industry. Every major war that takes place or is in the works only strengthens arms makers, because countries observing the conditions in those far-flung arenas for war prepare for wars of their own.
Yeah.
Every country has, please.
No, that's true, because that is something which most of us, we are not able to. It's like pitting one camp against the other, and not taking the entire scrutiny on who's making money out of it.
Arms manufacturers always win.
Yes.
Can I answer the questions in the chat?
Yes, sir. Yeah, the first question is by Gaurang Salkar. So I'll give you a bit of context. For example, in India, most of the events, festivals that we have, even the New Year, it is based on the agriculture cycle.
Yes.
Of harvesting, sowing, all of it. So how do you see religious events and narratives of victimization around Islamic and Jewish holidays and festivals?
Well, Jewish holidays are also based on an agricultural cycle. We've got historical reasons. in our scripture, but we are now in the second day of our, as you said, the beginning of our new year, which is very much agricultural because this is the beginning, the end of summer, the beginning of autumn, which is the beginning of the agricultural cycle here. In that sense, I don't think we are very different from India or from most places I know. Religion is a part of life here, but for the majority of people, I think it's more of a cultural staple than it is a fervent belief that guides them in political decision making or in political commitment. And I see there's another question here about whether I said that Hamas is not jihadi, and I'm asked if this means that Hamas does not use the idea of Islamic apocalypse in its propaganda to attract vulnerable recruits. No, to the best of my knowledge, it doesn't. Hamas doesn't seek a jihad. Hamas is part of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood does not consider itself a jihadi organization.
Yeah.
It is devoted to politics. It has a clear idea of the place of Islam in public space, but Hamas defines itself first and foremost as a Palestinian organization, as part of the Palestinian national struggle. And even as a religious organization, it does not adopt, as far as I know, the ideas of the jihad. It does not strive for an apocalypse like ISIS and Al-Qaeda and equivalent organizations. Another question. Hamas is equivalent to
terrorist organization like ISIS.
Yes. Will Israel take off the terrorist tag from Hamas as it was previously taken from the PLO? That's a very good question. And if Israel acknowledges the reality that I believe is very real, that there's no solution to Gaza without Hamas, then I think it will. Yes, I think that negotiations are carried out with one's enemies, negotiations for peace. And like I said, the label terrorist is the tag is a political tag. The decision to call somebody a terrorist is based on the political context and political circumstance. If Israel negotiates with Hamas, in that context and those circumstances will change. And yes, then Israel, Hamas will have to make some changes too. I don't think Yahya Sinwar, if he's still alive, he can negotiate with Israel. And I think the current leadership of Hamas will have to go away, and Hamas will have to join maybe other people, and will have to rebrand itself. But yes, Israel will negotiate with senior Hamas members, and those senior Hamas members will not be viewed as terrorists. Yeah.
So the second last question is from Gaurang. It is that in what ways do religiously timed ceasefires influence perception, opposing sides, and larger geopolitics?
Well, again, as I said, Israel is right now in the midst of what is a 3-week holiday period, 3 separate holidays, a 3-week holiday period. One might expect that during those holidays, Israel would prefer not to fight, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So rules are changing, although the holidays have never been an excuse for not fighting here. Israel's big 1973 war against its Arab neighbors began on Yom Kippur, which is a very solemn religious Jewish holiday where a lot of people fast and no cars drive in the streets. It was meant as a surprise. So in the Middle East, religious holidays are not necessarily an excuse for not fighting. Sometimes they're an excuse for launching a war.
So my next question is that so Rashmita is asking, what are the chances once the war ends that the current prime minister is going to be elected again? I think he'll go to jail, but anyway, and most of the other cabinet members.
I'm not sure he'll go to jail. His trial is ongoing. It has been slowed and postponed by the war. And again, most Israelis don't like him. And polls right now are showing that his coalition will lose enough seats to send it into opposition. But the parties that are supposedly polling best are parties that don't exist yet. Okay, what happens if somebody like our former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett returns to politics and establishes his own party. That party is polling at something like 20 seats in our 120-seat parliament. So polls are irrelevant, and in that sense, Netanyahu has solid support. And again, this is a point I can't stress enough. As far as war goes, as far as security policy goes, there is no opposition to Netanyahu. Everybody supports what he does. Everybody agrees with what he does. Just about everybody.
Yeah.
So if Israelis face an election and they need to vote for the original Netanyahu or for pay limitations, I think a lot of them will end up voting for the original Netanyahu. I think there's a good chance that unless he is convicted in his criminal trial, which is a long ways away, if an election takes place sometime during the next year, there's a good chance that he will end up prime minister again.
Yeah, that is a decision that the Israeli citizens have to take. And one thing which I have, no matter how much we critique his personality and his maneuvering, one thing which I'll have to, he is a very sharp geostrategic hawk.
He is I don't know if I necessarily agree with you on his geostrategic skills, but he's a very smart, wily politician.
Yeah.
And he understands that sometimes a politician can thrive even when he's not personally liked.
Yeah.
If he says what most Israelis feel, even if they feel uncomfortable expressing it, and he seems inevitable, and nobody can envision anybody to replace him, even if nobody likes him. If he seems like he's a permanent fixture, and he thinks he can win, and I don't doubt that he's quite possibly right. His geostrategic hawkishness is, I think, less relevant. I don't know if he's a geostrategic hawk. He is an opportunist. He is someone who knows how to leverage opportunities. He is very keen and very sharp, and he prepares all kinds of contingency plans for himself, not for the country. So in that sense, I think that's what he's doing right now. But as far as domestic politics go, he's very sharp, very smart, very wily. I no doubt that will serve him in the weeks and months and years to come.
Yeah, it's like 16 years, more than 16 years.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and in spite of so many coalitions falling and breaking and making again, and he has sustained himself, and that is something which he needs to get credit of. Like that is smart.
Oh, yeah, he is a he's a consummate professional, much more so than anybody who is in theoretical opposition to him at the moment.
Yeah. So my last question to you is, and this is one question that was asked to me yesterday, and I didn't know the answer perfectly. How does Israel see India?
Good question. It depends on which parts of Israel. I think Prime Minister Netanyahu considers Prime Minister Modi to be a like-minded soul, cut from the same cloth, if you will. A leader who is, how should we? A politician who considers himself above politics. Okay? Somebody who's not, who doesn't think the daily grind of political work is his to do. He considers himself an elder statesman. Israel, I think now, Israel appreciates India. Israel appreciates India's close working relationship with Israeli industry, including the weapons industry.
Yeah.
And Israel thinks of India, I think, as a pragmatic partner. It understands India's senior position in West Asia, and understands India's contacts with Iran, for example, close contacts with Iran. But generally, I think Israel considers India an ally, and sees it as someone who, even though India perceives and occupies a position of leadership in the global south, Israel thinks that India is capable of appreciating Israel's position and complexities is not automatically against Israel, is not just critical of Israel. Like China, for example, China has been very critical of Israel. India is not. So I think official Israel appreciates that tremendously,
Yeah.
and is definitely sees Israel's relationship with India as part of Israel's future.
Yeah. That is one of, like we were on 8th of September 2023, when during G20 presidency of India at New Delhi, the IMEC plan was announced. And
Yes.
then the I2U2, and then I2U2 was way before, but also we have more than 85,000 Indian Jews in Israel. After the Kargil war, there were so many from the Northeast community, a lot of Jews from there, and not even non-Jews were taken over to train in the Israeli military. Uh, uh, Earlier this year, there were like 50,000, 60,000 civilians from Punjab and Haryana who went to work in Israel. So over the period of time, the diaspora of India, or the ancient lineage, that has also increased massively. And there's tremendous support for, in the Indian media, there's tremendous support for Israel. It's like,
Yes,
it's massive.
No, I can understand. And there's also, India's position, India's understanding of political Islam as a viable threat. And again, there is, I think, real kinship between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Prime Minister Modi. So I think official Israel is, again, very appreciative of India and quite eager to not just preserve, but enhance the relationship, sees it as a strategic relationship for the future. I'll say this again: India is probably the one of the only major country in the global South that has not taken an active, critical position of Israel. When you think of BRICS, for example.
Yeah.
So in that sense, certainly a close relationship and a budding one.
Yeah. India has also not designated Hamas as a terrorist organization, strongly believes in a two-state solution, which they have been very clearly adherent for. And the power echelons do believe that there is, I think, to a certain extent, the kind of, for example, now there's an 800-year-old Indian hospice in West Bank that is right now helping the refugees in West Bank. There are so many, Indian diaspora in Israel, and the longevity of, even though we established official diplomatic relations with Israel in only 1992, and the first embassy was set up in Mumbai, and later it was shifted to Delhi. I think India is at a very strong point of leverage where it can actually play a pivotal role in peaceful negotiations.
I agree with you. I hope India steps into the fray and assumes that position. Again,
yes.
I'm mentioning China because I know a little bit about the Chinese position. China is also talking about mediating peace, but it hasn't done much to do that. I very much hope that both India and China perhaps find a chance to cooperate. We certainly need all the help that we can get. And India is a country that has powerful interests in the Middle East. It is an honest broker. It speaks to both Iran and Israel. In that sense, I think it is uniquely situated to provide real help. I hope India does that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ori. With this, I would really like to thank you for many accounts. First, for being so honest and vulnerable about what your mental, socio-economic, political condition right now is. Very few speakers are that honest. And it is not easy to explain one's own trauma. So I'm very thankful to you. Second, I'm also very thankful to you for being this lone community member, which is able to, not just go into the binary of black and white, but see the complexity of it and also understand that why people are not able to process without judging. And understanding their own, country's politics and such scrutiny and being so honest about it. Thirdly, I would like to say that by switching from Hebrew to English, you continue to speak truth to power. Your audience has changed. If you would have been writing in Hebrew, I would not be able to contact you. So your audience has changed, but your voice still has a lot of power.
I am very grateful for all those kind words. They help me and they strengthen me in doing what I'm doing, and I'm very happy to have had the chance to talk to you and to the students. I think this is really a discussion about what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Lebanon. I think there are lessons there that the world needs to learn. I think they will shape the way the world order perceives itself in the years to come. I think this should be a global discussion, and I'm very happy to have the opportunity to take it up on the global stage with such a knowledgeable and curious and intellectually keen Indian audience. Thank you very much.